What is up, sexy people? It is Dave, it is Duncan, back from Metal Epidemic for another album review. For this review, Duncan and I have been checking out the new album from rising alternative quartet, PREYRS. The band's new album, The Wounded Healer, will be released on November 14th via Pelagic Records. Busking on the streets of Belfast from the age of 15, Amy Montgomery met multi-instrumentalist Michael Morissette a few years later. And
Can't be stumbling this early in it. Right. Pick up, Buchanan.
Always fuck up people's names, that's a given. Both songwriters in their own right, with Michael fronting renowned Irish post-hardcore outfit Mojo Fury, and working as a producer for artists including the Bonnevilles, his own Mojo Fury, and Joshua Burnside. Amy was, until now, always the focus of their collaboration. From the now 4 pieces new Janiform name, Janiform? That's a new one. A twisting, conflicting play on the tenderness and innocence of prayer and the deadly dance of prey and predator to the band's fiercely independent journey, PREYRS is a project already steeped in story. The Wounded Healer is the first album as PREYRS, alongside longtime guitarist Nolan Donnelly and new bass player Kieran McGreevy. Represents a monumental shift in the way the band lives and breathes, with creativity and collaboration unleashed as a fully fleshed out 4-piece rather than writing and performing under Amy's name alone. Embracing this reinvention of the band at a fundamental level, PREYRS even reworked their writing and recording process. Amy and Michael decamped to Canada's Wolfe Island, a 48 square mile island on Lake Ontario, in the dead of winter, and set up a studio on the ground floor of their small, otherwise quiet hotel. They spent a month overlooking the frozen lake, safe from the minus 20 degrees outside, left having written the entirety of The Wounded Healer before Michael recorded and produced it at his own 3-song studios just outside Belfast. Inspired by the highly influential Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung, writings on The Wounded Healer will explore the concept of an entity, be it a person or a nation, developing the capacity for empathy and healing through welcoming and embracing their own past traumas and vulnerabilities. The Wounded Healer is itself proudly full of dualities, conflicts, and juxtapositions. Okay, never heard of PREYRS before, but a couple of things about this band made me think, okay, maybe we need to investigate this a little bit further, Duncan.
Pelagic.
Firstly, very new band. Like, I know they've had like bands and projects in the past, but PREYRS as a band is relatively new. So to be signed to Pelagic this early on a debut, like, that kind of spoke volumes to me when I read that. It's quite rare for like a label of that size to maybe kind of snap up a band this early on. But the third reason was kind of more of a feeling, I suppose.
More than a feeling, Dave.
More of a feeling.
Oh, more of a feeling. That's a different song.
When I checked out one of the singles from this, and when I heard it, it kind of made me think of the first time we heard Boy George by Vukovi. Back in like
2014?
Yeah, way back. Whenever it was. And it wasn't like necessarily like they sounded the same. Although I will come back to Vukovi later on. But there was something exciting about that Vukovi track. Like, oh, this band are really cool, but I feel like they haven't maybe reached their full potential yet, but you could tell they had it, like, and things were only going to get bigger. And when I heard the PREYRS track, I was like, okay, this feels like a band that could fall into the same kind of category as that. I would also say that this may be down to like the pre-PREYRS experience they've had, but they sound much further along than you would expect from a band on their first album. And like, there's moments of this album where it kind of sounds like they're still figuring stuff out, like as to like what works cohesively and compositionally, but not to the point where I was like, oh yeah, this is a debut, this is rough around the edges, for a band that are bringing together this many styles and ideas, it's actually very well put together. Like, this is, yeah, it didn't feel like a album one. This felt like maybe a 2 or a 3 to me. It's like stylistically, I was like having a bit of a hard time kind of like classifying them almost. Like, and I suspect that's maybe a choice of the band's, but by saying it's alternative leaves it fairly loose. Like, and PREYRS do, like, they are up and down on that alternative scale, but they also, like, they're weaving in bits that are kind of a wee bit more gothic or even more industrial or atmospheric and kind of folky. Even like there's some kind of like stonery grunge kind of moments in there as well at times. So it's like there's many shades to this. Like, this is not a kind of black and white type band. They tend to live in that kind of grey area musically, vocally and lyrically as well. But wherever they kind of decide to take it, it was always really interesting. And as like the press kind of alluded to there, like each track kind of plays into those themes of like duality and juxtapositions. There's always that kind of back and forth going on, and not just like vocally or lyrically, but musically as well. The way they pair, like there's a kind of like folky kind of blues slide guitar with something quite industrially percussive on Wave of Wisdom, for example, or the way like Into the Blue has this like kind of dichotomy of like really like big kind of scuzzy guitars, but against these really elegant strings as well. The title track also falls into that kind of design of having like soft, intimate moments amongst this really like driving bass tone that just like really pulses the track along with a kind of shuffling groove behind it. And they like that. They quite enjoy, playing with that kind of light and shade throughout these tracks. But then, there are moments on this album where the tracks err on the heavier side, with something a bit more up tempo. Tracks like Zeros, Ones and Lies, or even Crucify as well, which that one for me had like a little bit of an early Vukovi kind of vibe. Both in the kind of more modern, like alternative guitar style, it's a little bit chunkier, but also the way that Amy pronounces certain words on that track as well.
Yeah.
Like she adds in a more of a kind of Irish accent, which the first time I heard it, I don't know if it's just because I'm Scottish, I was hearing a Scottish accent as well.
That's why I asked you before we started recording. I asked you where's she from. I didn't read the press statement because I first heard Scottish, and then on the second listen, I was like, no, there's more of an Irish lilt to it than Scottish. So yeah, I'm glad we went through the same journey on that.
Yeah, exactly the same. But yeah, regardless of the style or the intensity, like the band keep this album really tight. It's really dynamic, and they really put a focus on the arrangements of the tracks on this release, making sure like nothing overruns. There's nothing meanders on this album. These tracks are like mostly between like kind of 3 and 5 minutes. So there's no real like kind of bloating on this, but they never feel empty or lacking in substance either. The way they use like synths and electronics, really, they use it in a really clever way. Sometimes just to add an additional layer to kind of build up a section, but also on occasion, they'll let them more at the forefront to add a bit more character to a track as well. Also adding bits of piano on tracks like WDIFL to add just a little bit more emotion. There's always something to catch your ear on these tracks, which I really liked. And that's not even mentioning the vocals, which the vocal performance from Amy Montgomery is fantastic on this release. Her tone, her delivery, the different levels of rasp and emotion she brings is done extremely well. Again, like kind of like the band, like she reminds me of so many different things, different styles and different vocalists. I imagine she's got quite a varied background, in terms of music that she's been inspired by or influenced by or listens to. But like the similarities for me were ranging from like like a little bit of Janis Joplin to like Susie Quattro, a bit of Lady Gaga in there, but then mixed with something more kind of current, maybe like King Woman or Julie Christmas as well. But actually the last track, Life is Kind, I think it was called, a little bit of a kind of Alanis Morissette kind of vibe going on as well, which is more on the uplifting side of things. But she is a definite highlight on this release. Loved her voice, just a voice with so much character to it, which I absolutely adore. But I'd also say that the music here isn't just like a vehicle to spotlight like Amy's vocal. I think if you remove Amy's vocal from these tracks, the music is still really interesting. It's still very creative, which isn't always the case with bands who have a great front person. Finally, other thing that I really enjoyed about this was the production of the album.
The production's awesome.
It really is. It's got a really interesting mix of stuff that reminded me of like a kind of more vintage, kind of like analog kind of character and the instrumentation, but then it also kind of lands with like the punch of a more modern production as well at the same time. And like when I was thinking about that today, I was like, it's kind of like the PREYRS sound as well. Like it has references to a lot of 80s and 90s kind of music, but also isn't afraid to mix in something more current. So I feel like they've got the production that like 100% matches their sound. For a band I never really had before, I really enjoyed this, and I feel like this is a band we really need to keep a close eye on for sure. And like if any in the kind of references I mentioned on this album are kind of piquing your interest, then definitely give this a listen. I wouldn't don't sleep on this band. They are definitely ones to watch out for. What about yourself? What do you think? What do you make of this
this
Dave,
band? Say your prayers and take your vitamins. That's what I'm saying.
Holy shit.
Yeah, this is a Duncan album, and there's a couple of big old reasons behind this one straight away. You mentioned that production is absolutely awesome. It manages to somehow mix what feels like live room drums, like the drums are just nice and bright and loud and not fucked with, and like really, 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 there's a really interesting production and character on the guitars. All the way through, and the guitars go through various phases of scuzzy to clean to kind of folksy to bluesy, and the production just always just is right in the middle. But the use of other instrumentation on this is kind of brilliant. So I'm assuming that comes from our man's multi-instrumentalist background, but the synths, the strings, whether they are in fact real strings or synthetic strings, I don't know, but they work really well. The stuff that's done in more an industrial vibe around the bass work, or the drums like accentuated with industrial sounds, the production just captures it in such a way that changes can come mid-song but never throw off the production. And it's hard to do that when you're, like you said before, you're playing with big, weighty, scuzzy sounding guitars and delicate sounding strings. You would think that one would be subsumed by the other, but it never happens here. And also to have such a powerful vocal presence, which doesn't distract from the instrumentation in the background, also very difficult. I can see why they made in the press here, they made a point of saying, this is the first time it's not just a vehicle for the vocals, there's a band here as well. Because you could just easily listen to her sing and forget that there was anything playing underneath. But the music is crafted in a really, really interesting way. What I love about this is you mentioned that like some of the genres it reminds you of. There's a touch of the new metal in here. On some of those kind of like sort of riffs and the tracks building up. There's a little bit of bims, a little bit of new metal in here. Crucify, where you're hearing Vukovi, I'm hearing nothing but Queens of the Stone Age, like all the way through that track. Even the guitar solos like kind of weird, kind of lo-fi, scuzzy, not quite full guitar thing going on there. So a wee bit of Nine Inch Nails through this as well, which does me proud of, probably around the kind of with teeth Year Zero era. Sounds really, really cool. I love how they incorporate that, and I think you're right. Like, I mean, it's surprising to hear it's a debut. It's surprising to hear that it's on Pelagic. Also surprising that they're a Pelagic band. This is like much more mainstream than Pelagic usually ventures out with bands like Clone, for example, which have certainly moved that way over time. This is one of these ones that, listening to them like that, there's a handful of really, really good singles here that are single length, that are not like 8-minute tomes, which is almost like, it's not against the Pelagic ethos, but they are a bit of an oddity there, but a welcome one at that, because interestingly enough, they mix enough stuff through their sims that they could tour with a number of Pelagic bands and sound totally in place as an opening act. Like, you could put post-metal on after this and that would be fine. You could go down the road of, I was even thinking of like a Sugar Horse could play above this band, and the kind of folksier quality or elements that are in there would not be too distracting from a kind of Sugar Horse headline. I think as well, on top of that, vocally, I kind of have to stress this, she has an incredible raspy tone. It's smoky, it's rich, but it's full. The harmonies, though, are just jaw-droppingly good. And we've come off not that long ago talking about is it Friendship Commander? And we were like literally saying, vocal performance out in front, commanding everything, and here we are a couple of weeks later and getting the same thing. And I've moaned a huge portion of this year thus far, saying we're spending too much time talking about bands like Ginger and bands like Spirit Box, where the gimmick is, they're pretty singers, but listen to how they scream. This is still a metal vocal, you know what I mean? There's enough rasp and enough behind it, but it's a powerful performance. I also got a little bit of kind of the alternative Alanis Morissette towards the end on those softer moments. I put that down to Alanis, like specifically 90s Alanis Morissette, maybe less nowadays Alanis Morissette. She had that kind of awkward, kind of, almost busker sim. She sounded like she probably had busked. I don't think she did, but and that's how it sounded. So once again, doesn't surprise me that she's cut her chops out in the streets with a guitar, just like belting out your lyric. That to me makes sense. That story feels real. It feels lived in, and this music also feels lived in. There's something inviting about it. I, like you, like listening to this, even at the end of the first one, I was just like, right, where do we get more? Like I felt like the album is 40 minutes. It's not a short album, but I did kind of feel it finished, and I was like, right, well, let's get the next one recorded, guys. Like, what am I doing here? I could eat this with a spoon, man. Honestly, it's so Moorish. There's so much of their sound which is recognisable, but there's no two songs here sound alike. But they cohesively sound like one entity. But I think that is really interesting. I think, like you said, and liking it to Vukovi in this instance, that album that you referenced had Boy George on it. When you go back and listen to it, it is a band that are just experimenting with 100 different sounds, trying to find out what lands. And there are some songs on that are huge, like the songs they still play live. And there's other songs that are quirky wee oddities that are kind of awkwardly placed on the album, probably to fill it out. In the case of this one here, they're throwing everything at the wall. The interesting thing about this one is that I didn't actually feel like any track missed a step. And actually the flow works really well in the way they've done it. It builds in interesting ways that they can either go big or go home on some songs, or go a little bit more vulnerable, a little bit more inviting, draw you in as a listener, and it works as well. At the moment I'm thinking unlimited potential. Like, I'm genuinely excited about this one. And like you said as well, if there's one album we discuss on this group of recordings where you see me wearing this t-shirt and Dave wearing, one of the fuck Dave's wearing, and merch, the group of recordings, there we go. The merch, Dave's promoting, sorry. Where did you get that interesting looking top, Dave?
Well, Duncan, if you head over to metalepidemic.com, there's a little page on there for merch where you can get your own t-shirts, your hats,
for Christmas,
your hoodies,
right in time for Christmas.
What you want.
Send it to your friend. But there's a. If you listen to all these ones here, this is the album I would like push to the front, because I imagine, knowing how I know the music industry is, this is the one that people won't have heard. And there's a couple of more obscure ones, but this is this is on a decent label with presence. But I imagine this could get easily lost in the mix, and I think it is worth checking out, and it is definitely worth keeping an eye on.
For sure. Okay, so final thing, what would we score The Wounded Healer by PREYRS? This is a very enjoyable album. I really enjoyed my listens to this, and I feel like the amount of potential this band has is kind of nuts. I feel like there are moments of this album where they're still testing things out, seeing what works. But I expect that, when they come back with the next one, which hopefully is not too far away, that, all those kind of edges will be kind of sanded off. At the moment, I'm a 4 out of 5 of this. I thought it was really good, really solid, strong album for a debut. This is very good indeed. Really enjoyed it. What about yourself? What are you thinking?
I'm twinning with you. This is a 4 for me. I think this, I genuinely think this is absolutely, it's a stonking debut.
Yeah.
And, an exciting band to keep an eye on for sure. I think we won't be too far away from going. It just does everything right. It's there. It's all there in their DNA. I think just a little bit of time out in the road, a little bit of time in the studio, and we're there.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. PREYRS and The Wounded Healer out on November 14th on Pelagic Records. Check out the links, check out the band, have a listen, see what you think. Check this one out. That is the review. Thanks for checking out. We'll be back with another review very soon, but until then, take care. We'll catch you on the next one.
Bye, everyone.
Don't touch me!